Within Studio One, we have the ability to combine native VST instruments, third-party instruments, effects, note effects such as the arpeggiator or quarter into one multi-instrument device. Now we have two different ways that we can go about creating these multi-instruments, so let's go ahead and take a look at the first method. So I'm going to click on the Instruments tab and then open up our Personas folder. I'll go ahead and drag this Mojito in. Then I'll close that out and I'll drag our presence onto the same track as our Mojito. Then we're given this window where it's asking us if we'd like to replace, keep, or combine. I'll go ahead and click on Combine. And then this combines both of these instruments into one multi-instrument device. And so that's the first way we can go about creating our multi-instrument. I'm going to come down to the drop-down menu and remove that instrument. Then I'll Shift T to take that track out. Then let's take a look at the second method. We can come up to the top of our Instruments tab, and we can see we have multi-instruments, and within this folder we actually have some presets that are available, and you can actually explore these a little bit and see what's available. We have one for chords, for layer, sequence, solo, and split. But we just want to bring in a generic multi-instrument, so I'm going to drag that onto our arrange view. Now at this point I could come over to the browser and load the instruments by dragging them into the empty space here, but I'm going to close out the browser and let's make this multi-instrument a bit larger. And here we have instruments. I'm going to click on the plus symbol, choose our Mojito. That then loads and opens up so that we can tweak the parameters there, but I'm going to close that out. Then I'll come back to our plus button here and then add our presence, close that back out, and then we can see we have both our Mojito and presence loaded into our multi-instrument. Now to the left we have an inspector area where we can find out more information about what's going on with our individual instruments. Just by clicking once, we can select and change to view for either one. Right now, the Mojito is selected. We can see we actually have a fader, an area for adding inserts, sends, we've got mute, solo, and our channel editor. We can select the range that this instrument will be played back on our MIDI controller. So you can see that this color ties in with the bar down below, and this bar indicates currently our Mojito is spread out across the entirety of our MIDI controller. If we would like to change that, we can click here in this field and manually input a value, but I'll go ahead and press a key on my MIDI controller, and then that field will populate automatically. I'll click the second field and then choose another key to set that range for our Mojito. I'll click out of there and then select our presence. Now let's click in this field. I'll press the first key, the second field, the second key. Both fields are now populated, and then we can see down below above our virtual keyboard, these bars have adjusted themselves accordingly. So now at this point I can play back the Mojito as well as the presence at the same time. But first we do need to load a patch into our presence. So to access our presence or any instrument that we have loaded within here, we can just double click on its edit module, and then let's come up to our presets area here, and I will come to the synth session here and let's load in a lead, an analog lead there. Then I'll close out the presence. Let's see if we have our sound now. Okay, now if we would like to layer these devices, we can always just come to the bar and then drag and make that adjustment below. And now we can trigger both devices at the same time. Now within our edit modules here, we have a power button so that we can power off any instrument that we have within our display. We also have a drop-down menu where we can choose to edit our instrument. We can rename it, disable, remove, and extract. Now next to our Add Instruments button here, we have Note Effects. So if I click here, we can actually add an arpeggiator, quarter, input filter, or repeater onto one or all of the devices that we have loaded. So I'm going to choose the arpeggiator, and then let's choose a random preset here. I'll go ahead and close that out, and by default it's going to add that Note Effects device to both instruments. So then if I go ahead and play back, and we can hear that that's now triggering both devices. If we'd like for it to apply to only one instrument, we can simply click, hold, and drag on our arpeggiator and move it above the instrument we'd like to apply it to. Next to our Note Effects, we have a splitter, and this is going to apply if we have more than two instruments. So we can continue loading instruments within this device. If I come to the Add Instruments, I'm going to load in another Mojito. We can see we have its edit module here. And then at this point, I can drag in our splitter and place that there. And then that's going to subdivide our Presence and Mojito from the initial Mojito here. And we can even change the location of our arpeggiator. Currently it's only applied to the Presence, but if we'd like to apply it to both the Presence and Mojito, we can simply click, hold, and drag that above the splitter, and now it will affect both of these devices. So the splitter is just going to give us more flexibility within our routing matrix. And if we'd like to remove that, we can click on the drop down arrow and just select Remove. And I'm actually going to remove the second Mojito. Now if we'd like to rename a device, we could just simply double click on the name down below, and if we'd like to change to a different color, we can click once and just select one there. And we can see that that's then updated. And this area that we've been working in is the routing matrix for the multi-instrument device. But we have a couple other areas that I just want to cover very briefly. Here we have an area for our macro controls. And now this is going to basically represent the external MIDI controller that you're using with your multi-instrument. And I'm using an LX25, which has 8 pots and 8 buttons. So we can map these controls to control different parameters for one or both of our instruments. And we would make those assignments by clicking on the wrench icon here. So just coming to your instruments, you can choose your parameters and map those to knobs and buttons to control your devices with one knob or one button. Let's come back to our routing matrix, and then actually I'm going to close out the multi-instrument and just finish off with opening up the console to show you that we only have one channel here for our multi-instrument that is being displayed. But if you notice, we have a folder here at the bottom of the channel, and if I click that, we can expand out and see the channels for both of our individual instruments. And this is how we can go about working with multi-instruments within Studio One.